I'm going, oh, I'm going to get us started now. I'm going to talk for a few minutes, so if people keep showing up, they won't miss anything for the first bit. My name is Ashley. I'm the operations manager at Eastern Edge, and I'm really excited to get to host this event tonight. A huge thank you to Hazel Meyer and Cait McKinney for joining us to share their performance, How to Build a Ruin, as a part of our seminar. This seminar is a part of a larger project called Art as a Tool for Change that has been taking place at Eastern Edge since October 2021. Art as a Tool for Change recognizes art as an empowering tool to facilitate critical dialogue around feminism, anti-racism, 2S LGBTQIA rights, environmental activism, and much more. This symposium weekend will feature discussions, workshops, and presentations that will highlight diverse artists from across Canada, whose work is empowering, inspiring, and challenges social paradigms. Throughout the symposium, we will explore the question, as artists, how can we create art that has the power to affect change? I would like to thank our funder, the Canada Arts Presentation Fund. This government funding body provides financial assistance to organizations that professionally present arts festivals, performing arts series, arts presenters, and organizations that offer support to arts presenters. This project would not have been possible without their generous support. I'm now going to read a land acknowledgement. Eastern Edge and our staff are located in St. John's, Newfoundland. I know that our audience is located elsewhere as well, but I will start with this. We respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we are occupying is the unceded and ancestral homelands of the Beothuk, and that Uktahunguk, known as the island of Newfoundland, is the homelands of the Mi'kmaq and Beothuk. We would also like to recognize the Inuit of Nunatsiavut and Nunatukavut and the Innu of Nitassinan. This acknowledgement is a commitment that we practice in action, striving for respectful relationships with all people across Turtle Island. I would now like to introduce Hazel Meyer and Cait McKinney. Hazel Meyer's work with installation, performance, and text investigates the relationships between sport, sexuality, feminism, and material culture. And Cait McKinney is a media historian and assistant professor in the School of Communication at Simon Fraser University. Hazel and Cait's collaborations explore their shared attachments to queer histories through research, writing, and archival interventions. Their work has been presented in No More Potlucks, Little Joe, Queers in Cinema Magazine, File, Insight Journal of Experimental Media, and Deep Down Body Thirst, curated by Collective Radcliffe Hall for the Glasgow International. Their film Slumber Party 2018 has been screened at various festivals, including London International Film Festival, Artists Moving Image Festival, Tramway and Lux Scotland, and the Porn and Film Festival Berlin. They are currently working on They Olympia, a video about the 1990 Vancouver Gay Games. And then just some housekeeping before we get started. This performance is going to be recorded and made available on our website, along with a full written transcript of the performance. We have also enabled live transcripts. So on your Zoom screen, down in the bottom right, you should see the option to turn transcripts on and off during the performance. And we will also have a short period for questions and discussion at the end. So that's it for me. I'm going to turn off my video and turn it over to Hazel and Cait.
This performance is being filmed in front of a live studio audience. How to Build a Ruin. Walter Benjamin says ruins are a painting of an angel by Paul Klee blowing into the future. Jordy Rosenberg says ruins are places where past conquests mark the soil indelibly, not unlike flesh. Claire G. Coleman says ruins are uninhabitable, except for ghosts and rats. Even the dogs steer clear. Ricky Vargas says ruins join space and time, livability and abandonment, remembering and rupture. Indiana Jones says that ruins are full of treasures. West Coast Moss Removal says that moss, algae, and lichen on your roof will turn your home into a ruin. Eileen Miles says that ruins represent delinquency, and that might be freedom. She also says that old tattoos are ruins. Juana Maria Rodriguez says that San Francisco is a ruin, haunted by Latinx queers, quote, smearing disease and trauma-stained fluids over the power-washed sidewalks of a city that we once called home. Irmgard Emmelheim says that queerness is a ruin, deprived of its capacity to disrupt and contest anything that matters. At least we can get married now. I never really liked Leo Bersani's work, but I think he might call the rectum a ruin if pressed. Christina Sharp only uses the word ruin one time in the whole of her book, In the Wake. She quotes Maurice Blanchot, "The disaster ruins everything." That made me rethink who and what the concept of ruin is useful for. There is a Shawn Mendes song called Ruin about the aftermath of a breakup. In the music video, Mendes looks soft and brooding and croons, "I'm not trying to ruin your happiness, baby." The Ruins 2008 is a horror movie that takes place at an archaeological dig of a Mayan temple in Mexico. The temple is home to a vine that eats everyone who enters. The film was produced by Ben Stiller from Zoolander. Susan Stewart, who wrote a book I love about miniatures, has a new book out about ruins. And in that book, Stewart says that looking at ruins is like looking at ourselves as artists, because ruins hold up making and unmaking all at once. I read a review of the book, not the book itself. Henry James says that pleasure in looking at ruins, quote, shows the note of perversity. Detroit says that artist and tourist fascination with the Rust Belt is ruin porn and to get out of their city. Tanya Whitehouse says, you know ruin porn when you see it, but everyone always says that about porn. Ross Macaulay calls herself a pleasurist of ruins and says there's masochistic joy in common destruction. Fiona Anderson says that ruins are not metaphors for lust. They're literally great places to cruise for gay sex. And also, please stop making ruins into a metaphor about gentrification and AIDS.
Animal Crossing New Horizons is the queer utopia we need right now, by Erica Lectie for Extra Magazine. There's no better distraction from the uncertainty of COVID-19 than the unreality of New Horizons. A world where illnesses are non-existent and your animal best friends send you gifts just because. And it's toilet paper. And for us queer and trans people who are among the most vulnerable and isolated right now, New Horizons feels similarly homey. Forget your real world bureaucracy. All out for 300 new calls. Hell, even your passport cuts your islands.
Part 1, Spomeniks, the motherland.
Hello? Hi, Mama. Hi. Hi. Hi, how are you, Mama? Okay, how are you, Hazel? I'm okay. I'm just like packing and, sometimes when you're packing, you kind of find things and then get sidetracked. Yeah, it happens. Yeah. So I'm totally sidetracked right now because I found all the photos from when Cait and I were in the former Yugoslavia last summer, and I found that picture that we sent you of me in front of the sign for Vashoti. Vashoti, yeah. But remember when I first gave it to you, or like, is that the right sign? Because remember you thought it was spelled differently?
Yeah, it is spelled differently, but I think, I don't remember any other place that is called like that. I think that's how it is. That's what it is now.
Do you like when you were a kid, had you ever seen a sign or had you seen it spelled?
No.
So maybe did you remember it phonetically?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think we were at the right place?
Oh, I'm sure you were. I have a feeling, yes, that you must have been.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
Because I can't think of any other place that would be called by that name.
No, hey?
No. So you're parking?
Yeah, totally.
How are you going to be moving?
Oh, we have movers. So you left in 66, right?
Yeah, we did 66, yeah.
Or
and
did you leave in 65 and then you were in that Italian?
Yeah, well, I'm not too sure, to be honest. I know we were there for 6 months in Latina,
Okay.
But we got to Canada, like to Montreal, in 1967 in October.
Oh, okay.
1st October or 1st November, I'm not sure, because there was no snow yet, so probably it was October.
Do you remember any kind of monuments around?
No, I don't. No, because I didn't travel from couple of times I was in Pula, but it was just maybe once or twice I was there, and I went to school to Pasing.
Yeah.
And then from there we moved to another part of Istra, and then I went to school to what was that? No, Rovin. I don't remember the name. Anyway, and from there we went over the border to Italy.
Okay, so these are photos of Spomeniks. Hazel, what's a Spomenik?
A Spomenik is a memorial. I've always thought of them as kind of monuments, but a Spomenik is Serbo-Croatian for memorial.
And how did we get these photos?
Oh, gosh, pre-COVID, so 2 summers ago, was it? Or even more now? You and I went to the motherland. We went to Croatia and we went to Bosnia to go visit these Spomeniks.
And like what kind of shape are they in?
Well, some of them, like this one, which is in a forest, like what would you call it, like a national forest, is really, really well taken care of. You can see like the concrete has been sand blasted or power washed, whereas one like that is also concrete and rebar, but really has aged. So some of them are doing fine, and then other ones are really in disrepair. Let me show you. There's one that's being used as cell phone tower, and all the sort of precious metals have been precious metals like steel have been removed from it. And this one, if you remember, was the first one we saw. And that one is completely just like rebar and structural cement that was destroyed during the Balkan War.
How do people like relate to these, do you think? Like, what do they mean for people?
Well, I think outside of the former Yugoslavia, people relate to them as clickbait. There have been some really beautiful photos taken with fancy cameras that kind of float around the internet that people tend to know these, know Spomeniks from, but people within Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina and all the sort of former Yugoslavian countries, I don't know. Remember when we went down what was labeled as unnamed road, and we came across this. So that was somewhere in Croatia, right? Yeah. And we went.
It was Josef's place.
It was Josef's place. And so these are the Spomeniks. We saw these incredible kind of like intestinal, snake-like blocks with curved edges. Oh, this is a great picture that shows you them in the field. And yeah, so they were down a road that said, that was labeled as an unmarked road. And we were taking some pictures, for research in my archives. And this older gentleman came up to us and was waving his arms. And I don't speak Croatian. I know how to say thank you, hvala. And he kind of brought us away from the Spomeniks and back to his place, where he gave us cookies that his mom had made. But it was only once we were back in Canada that I did a bit more reading that perhaps I should have done beforehand. And the space around this sort of like these Spomeniks in particular still had landmines. So that was not the greatest on my part, but yeah, those are the Spomeniks, and this one in particular. And I think what's worth mentioning with Spomeniks and what makes them interesting is that, unlike sort of war monuments as maybe we know them, that tend to be for very big, grand moments and people, a lot of the Spomeniks that are peppered throughout like the former Yugoslavia are for very small, very local kind of events, whether it be people or what would I say, like events that happen. So they're sort really
minor.
Yeah, minor local events. So which I think to pair that with a monument is interesting.
When evaluating wood-framed buildings, the key is to determine if rainwater is penetrating the exterior cladding and making contact with the wood framing. If that occurs, there will eventually be decay. The decay process begins with bacteria, mold, and staining fungi, which nourish themselves on the non-structural components of the wood. When this food supply is used up, the soft rot fungi and the wood rotting basidiomycetes take over and cause structural weakening of the wood. Exploratory openings locations were selected due to their high moisture content readings, stained or wet shavings when drilling for moisture readings, or decayed wood trim in the vicinity. We cut a round hole core through the cladding to allow for examination.
Hey, I'm going to read to you from my favorite book called The Craftsman by Richard Sennett. Also, FYI, don't lend books to Cait. They do so much marginalia. Anyways, here I go. Stucco is a lime and fine sieved sand mixture known since Roman times. Its composition is akin to terracotta, but can be made to look like marble. In all variants, stucco is a flexible material suitable for simulating many things that it is not. Ersatz columns can be poured in stucco, statues, urns, wood carvings. The builder's imagination could summon into being almost any construction the client desired. Isaac wears the complete body of architecture, addressed in detail such matters as to how inexpensively to simulate a grotto filled with porpoises, water nymphs, and painting on waterproof stucco, and how to tint a vein polished. Oh, I got confused, pardon me. Water nymphs by painting on waterproof stucco, and how to tint a vein polished stucco window frame to look like, yeah, you got it, Carrera. Stucco, it should be said, was the British social climber's material of choice. The material permitted quick, cheap constructions of, wait for it, grandeur.
Exploratory opening 9. The sheathing is wet, stained, and the surface is weakening. Exploratory opening 6. The sheathing is damp, stained, and partially decayed. Exploratory opening 2. The sheathing is dry and clean with only minor staining. Exploratory opening 5. The sheathing is visibly wet, has black staining, and is partially decayed. Exploratory opening 10. The sheathing is wet, has black staining, and the surface is weakening. Exploratory opening 3. The sheathing is wet and slightly stained. Exploratory opening 8. The sheathing is wet, stained, and the surface is weakening. Exploratory opening 7. The sheathing is damp, stained, and the surface is weakening. Exploratory opening 4. The sheathing is visibly wet, stained black, and is severely decaying. Part 2, Vancouver. Wet all the time.
I'm Cait McKinney, and this is Dense Green Clumps, your favorite podcast all about moss. I'm going to be joined today by Caleb, a moss removal specialist from West Coast Roof Cleaning and Moss Removal. We're going to be talking about moss as it grows on the roofs of buildings here in Vancouver.
Hi there, Caleb here from West Coast Roof Cleaning and Moss Removal.
Hey, Caleb, thanks for talking with me today. So we're here to learn more about the wonderful world of moss. Why should people care about moss? Why does it matter?
So if you're a homeowner in Vancouver or the Lower Mainland, chances are that at some point during the life of your roof, moss or algae stains will appear.
Just so we're clear on the same page, I'm really more interested in moss. I'm not so concerned about algae, or as you call it, algae.
What most people don't realize is just how destructive moss and algae.
Yeah, it's hard to say because I don't think it's a word. I'm interrupting you though mostly because I want to bring us back to what I think most people really are fired up about around moss, which is that question of like, how does moss start? Like, where does moss come from?
So moss and algae spread through spores and thrive on north-facing aspects.
Ah, okay, I see. So my building faces north, so there's never any sun. Like we can't even grow plants except this one fern that Hazel waters with like a sprayer bottle thing. So I'm guessing that probably our roof loves spores.
Or shade and moisture.
Yep, we got those.
Close proximity of trees also contributes to moss growth.
Yeah, lots of trees, and this woodpecker, he just will not shut up.
So once moss begins to grow, the rhizoids, or moss roots, embed themselves within the shingle, and the moss actually uses nutrients within the shingle itself.
Okay, so it's like a baby kangaroo or like a leech, but it eats roof shingles. I guess what I'm wondering then is what happens next? Like, what does the moss actually do to the roof?
Once moss has already started to thrive, it also holds a significant amount of moisture on your roof, again causing the shingles to deteriorate faster than they should.
Okay, that's definitely resonating for me because we for sure have a lot of moisture. Like the roof has even leaked before, and we had to put this big tarp that we use for camping over all the stuff in our closet so it would stay dry.
So how do you deal with this problem?
For me, I think there's still an outstanding question of like, is it a problem or not, or who is it a problem for though, right? Because like, sure, I don't want my roof to leak, but I don't know that the moss is like that big of a deal, and like it kind of looks cool, like having all this moss around on everything, like, oh, mossy moss, fern gully, whatever.
Well, at West Coast Roof Cleaning and Moss Removal, our goal is to restore your roof to looking its best.
I totally get that, and I mean, I invited you on the podcast knowing you are a moss removal guy, so like no harm, no offense meant at all, totally. So what do people usually do when they want to get rid of their moss?
Many people think that it is as easy as pressure washing the roof or throwing Tide on the roof, believe it or not.
No way, people throw Tide on the moss?
Believe it or not.
Oh, I believe it. So who regulates all this? Like who puts out all these stats about roofs and moss?
The Canadian Asphalt Shingle Manufacturers Association.
Tongue twister alert. That's why I do all those vocal warm-ups that you heard me do, Caleb, before we started recording the show. Last question for you, Caleb. So you pick up all the moss off the roof, take it off. You do not use Tide, you use your own professional solution. So once that's done, is the moss like dead forever? Like, are the spores gone?
Our process will restore your roof to looking great again, prevent new moss from growing for at least 1 to 2 years.
Thanks, Caleb, for joining us. That was Caleb from West Coast Roof Cleaning and Moss Removal, and this has been an episode of Dense Green Clumps, your favorite podcast all about moss. Join us next week for a special episode about the lichen of Lynn Valley watershed. If you liked what you heard today, you can become a monthly donor on our Patreon. Donors who give $20 or more a month receive regular mailings of actual moss. And that's it for this week. Stay wet, stay damp, stay mossy.
Day 18. It's raining still.
Man, this is hard. This is hard.
Now, the wind's picked up. It's been building all day. It's raining hard right now.
This is harder than I thought it was going to be.
I need to set up a tarp over my shelter because it's just raining constantly here.
After being out here and seeing the kind of rain they get out here, my plan for a shelter has definitely changed.
Well, it's raining, and it's getting colder along with that rain, so.
I just moved my camp. It's cold. It's raining.
I'm no longer going with just an angled roof. It's going to be a peak. There's no way that any kind of tarp or fir twigs or cedar boughs are going to keep out rain.
I'm actually wet, like, to my waist.
It has to be a steep angle, so I'm going 2 tarps overlapped and going to build up the walls and then build up almost like a log cabin over top of it to try and get even more protection from the rain.
Everything I have is wet, pretty much. It's totally soaked.
It's going to be a big chore. Staying dry, staying warm.
Not bad at all. Took my boots off so they wouldn't be wet. My toes are completely numb right now.
The weather is the hardest on you psychologically and physically. It's just relentless.
Yeah, it should be all right for tonight. I hope so anyway. I'm getting hypothermic. I don't have a camp yet. I don't have a fire yet. I don't know where I'm gonna set up. It's not good.
I have not done a thing here. I'm just kind of hunkered down, waiting the weather out.
Part 3, Disney, Toon Town in lockdown. It has the markings of an adventure straight from Disney's Swiss Family Robinson, being on an uninhabited island and living off the land. But for one Alabama man, the adventure on a former island attraction at Walt Disney World in Florida was short-lived and ended in an arrest. The man, Richard McGuire, 42, of Mobile, Alabama, was accused of trespassing at the theme park after he tried to camp on Discovery Island, a former zoological park that was closed in 1999. On Thursday, an Orange County Sheriff's deputy responded to a report of a trespasser on the island, which is east of Disney's Contemporary Resort in Bay Lake. A security representative for Disney told deputies she had seen a man using a boat earlier that day, and that the area was closed to the public with signs warning against trespassing. Mr. McGuire told the authorities he had reached the island on Monday or Tuesday to go camping and that he planned to stay there for approximately 1 week. Told that the area was restricted, Mr. McGuire said he was unaware of that and described the island as looking like a tropical paradise. Discovery Island, which was originally called Treasure Island, was an 11-acre zoological park that featured aromatic foliage, trees and flowers, and walk-through aviaries with more than 500 species of birds. Online maps show that the park, which opened in 1974, had a flamingo lagoon, a turtle beach, and an alligator swamp. It closed 25 years later, and photos and a 2017 video show the remnants of the abandoned attraction: deteriorating buildings, overgrown trees, a former animal hospital, and an abandoned dock. Since mid-March, all Disney theme parks worldwide have been closed, including Disney World in Florida and Disneyland in California. This is because of the coronavirus pandemic.
Minnie, we're here to assess your application for renewal of unemployment insurance benefits related to the
COVID-19 pandemic. I'm going to ask you a series of questions about your usual employment and your activities since March 2020. Do you understand?
Yes, I do understand.
It says here that you both live in and are also employed by Toon Town, which is a holding of the Walt Disney Company. This is a most unusual relationship for an employee outside the context of domestic work. So where I'd like to start this interview is, what exactly is Toon Town?
Well, Toon Town is where the toons live. I live here with Mikey and Donald and my girl Daisy and all of us.
And what is the nature of your work in Toon Town?
My work in Toon Town is to greet people when they're let in the morning. So I generally wake up, have some breakfast, say hi to all my friends, Mikey, Daisy, Donald, all of them, and then people are allowed to come through my house. They can sit on my sofa. They can use my computer, which is very beautiful. It's pink. There's an post office in Toon Town. There's a gym. I'm there to greet people, and then at night they go away and I go to sleep.
Your boyfriend, Mikey Mouse, is also a resident and employee of Toon Town, correct?
Yes. Mikey lives right beside me in Toon Town. He's got a house there and a studio in the back. He's been feeling really blue since we shut down.
And what have you been doing since the closure of the park in March?
Since the closure, I've been doing a lot of puzzles, baking bread. Daisy gave me her sourdough starter, bit of it. I've been watching Disney Plus, working on my archives. I'm thinking of doing an oral history interview with the chipmunks. I read somewhere that throughout history, in moments of upheaval, polka dots come back into style because they're so familiar. People understand them. They're not provocative. So I've been thinking about how to, monetize that. Maybe an Etsy shop. But that's for the future. For now, mostly I'm just waiting for Toon Town to open again.
Can you do me a favor? Can I ask you a question? Can you so Cait and I, we're thinking about like Spomeniks and ruins and monuments and stuff like that, and we want to call this project of ours How to Build a Ruin.
How to do what?
How to build a ruin?
Who?
No, that's just like a statement, like how to build a ruin. Can you like translate that for me?
But I don't know what ruin is.
Ruin, like if you like some of the things we saw in Bosnia in particular, you know, after the Balkan War, right? And all the bombings that happened, a lot of buildings were in ruins.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
You know, instead of like a building, it would be rubble, and that's an example of a ruin.
Okay. Well, I could try. I don't know if I would be successful because I don't know how to even say ruin. So does Reggie know that you're moving?
Yeah, because she sees boxes everywhere and she is upset, to say the least.
Yeah, she must be.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Thanks so much. I love you. Bye, Cvjetka.
Yeah, bye. No, anytime.
Bye.
Anytime. Bye.
Okay, cool. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Hazel and Cait. We can open it up now for questions. If anyone in the audience has questions, you can type them in the chat box or in the Q&A thing. I can start us off with a question while we wait for other people to come up with one. So I was thinking about the idea of an archive versus the idea of a ruin. What did I write down? Ways of engaging with history that highlight experiences of care or neglect. I'm wondering if you could speak to this idea of like an archive versus a ruin and how they can kind of be the same or different.
I mean, I think it's a great question, Ashley, because I think that's sort of what the work is about, is sort of pressing on or questioning those distinctions and thinking about how family histories and intimate histories that map onto sort of bigger events or constellations get distilled in the environment that's around us and our kind of effective relationships to it. Like, I think, what does it mean to be living in the place that we live, which is Vancouver, with all of its like particular colonial histories and the weight of that, and also the weather and the built environment, and having like just moved here at the start of COVID, and like thinking about that through the layers of these histories with Hazel's like family and the former Yugoslavia, and also just like the intimacies of like your conversations with your mother and the everyday rhythm of that. So to me, those things sort of like push on like why we call certain things an archive and other things not. And that's why I like that concept of ruins. What about you?
Yeah, totally. And I think I guess I started thinking about monuments a while ago in like 2017, when sort of like the real kind of, I know there's always been a reckoning going on with monuments in everywhere, but kind of the real big movement of reckoning with monuments in the States was really starting to happen. So thinking about, just like even care and what deserves the care, what deserves to kind of be taken care of, and thus maybe like archived in a certain way. And I think going to Croatia, which I'd never been to before, so it felt kind of really, special in many ways. But I think also just the fact that like I went there as very much like a white Western person being like, these Spomeniks, amazing. And, my mother who grew up there has just like no relationship to them, and just kind of holding that weight a little bit too.
Thanks. We had a panel about archives this afternoon with a few artists who work with archives, and something that came up in almost every presentation was the idea of like ghosts and hauntings, and working with archives as like collaborating with the past. And I think that idea of like hauntings really relates to the archive or the ruin. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. I don't know if we want to just give it a few minutes, or if you guys had anything else you wanted to say.
Well, just for a bit of context, so we made this performance and we performed it last April, was it? Or
No, it was December 2020 was the first time.
Oh, okay, December 2020. So it was interesting. Like it's always such a privilege to like be able to perform something again. I think we worked through a few things, but even just to like come back to, this writing about COVID, 2 years later, year and a half later. And then, even as we were sitting down yesterday to sort of go through things, thinking about like, it's hard not to think of, the Ukraine right now. I don't really have anything, that thoughtful to say, but just like, it's all kind of, it's everything has moved on, but yet it hasn't in so many ways. And that's always a kind of interesting sort of time, thing to kind of sit with.
The first time we did it in Hazel's studio, which like looks like Hazel's studio. Like it looks like an artist studio that Hazel works in, which gave it like, particular kind of background, but it didn't feel, I think, quite right. And this time we decided to locate it in our home. And one thing I realized while doing it this time is like, for me, this performance is an archive of like what the rhythm of our lives was like during lockdown, and what things we were like doing to amuse ourselves and also to like feel connected to that time. Like we spent a lot of time like literally talking about like jokes like, what is Minnie Mouse doing in lockdown, which is like not funny. People really like lost their jobs. So it's like on the one hand, like we kind of shouldn't be laughing at it, but it's also just this way of like, I don't know, kind of finding some brightness or some joy in this like really awful, what was this really kind of awful time. And so the performance for me itself, like even though it resonates differently doing it today rather than a year and a half ago, it's like I relate to it as this like kind of time capsule of our like kind of intimate lives as we decided to offer it in this performance.
Yeah, I like that.
Thank you. My other thought that I had as like a potential question was I was going to ask about the use of humor in your work, but you kind of touched on that just then. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add to that.
We just love making each other laugh, I think. Like we like just practicing this week, we just made each other laugh a lot.
My favorite is the podcast. Cait sounds like such a millennial podcaster.
Well, I am a geriatric millennial, so that makes sense.
I would fully listen to that if it was a real podcast.
Right. But I think I could speak for both of us on this when I say that is like a very kind of queer like politic in both our work, is to like be able to laugh when it seems like everything is just like fucking terrible. I think that's a really important sort of strategy of survival.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. We can call it now. We don't have any other questions. I have like a little bit of housekeeping stuff I'm going to end with, but did you guys want to say anything else before we finish up?
Thank you all so much.
Yeah,
for
thank
being
you for
here.
having us.
Yeah,
To be a
thank
part
you.
of your symposium.
It's a real pleasure.
Thank you so much for coming and doing this performance for us. Okay, let me grab my notes of what I had to say at the end. Right, so just before everyone leaves, I wanted to give you all a reminder that tomorrow is the last day of the symposium. So I believe that the registration is full for all of our online events, but there will be, sorry, for all of our in-person events, but there will be an online poetry reading at 2 p.m. Newfoundland time. That event is still open for registration. It will include readings by Michelle Syllaboy, Douglas Walborn-Goff, and Shalon Jowdry. There will also be a link made available to watch tomorrow night's film screening of Spruce Root Basket by Evan Butler online. This is a temporary link that will only be available tomorrow night. So if you'd like to watch that film, please send us an email. The recording of this performance will go up on our website soon, along with the full transcript and bibliography. And that's it for me. Thanks everyone for coming. Thank you, Hazel and Cait. And I hope to see you guys at our other events. Okay, good night.